Who will be the backup to Tyler Shough at quarterback for the Cardinals next season? Will Jeff Brohm once again go to a by-committee approach at running back? We'll answer those questions and more on today's episode of the Locked On Louisville podcast, where we discuss the top 3 position battles throughout the offseason. With that being said, let's get right on into the show.
You are Locked On Louisville, your daily podcast on the Louisville Cardinals. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hey, what's going on, everyone? Welcome into another episode of the Locked On Louisville podcast. I'm your host, Dalton Pence. Today's episode brought to you by FanDuel. Make every moment more. Right now, new customers get $150 in bonus bets guaranteed when you place a $5 bet. Visit FanDuel.com/LockedOn to get started. As always, I want to personally thank you all for making us your first listen of the day. Just a reminder, the Locked On Louisville podcast, free on all streaming services, including YouTube, 5 days a week, your team every day. On today's episode of the show, like I mentioned, discussing the top 3 position battles heading throughout the offseason, not just spring practice, but the offseason as a whole. A couple of questions that are going to have to be answered. First up, who will back up Tyler Shough at quarterback for the Cardinals? Will Jeff Brohm once again go with a by-committee approach at running back? And how will Ron English and the rest of the defensive coaching staff sort of work through the logjam at the defensive line position on the interior, determining the 2 deep, who's going to play, who is on the outside looking in, etc. So a lot of big-time questions that we hope to get the answers to. Probably won't be in spring practice. Probably, honestly, won't be until the season rolls around in late August in 2024. So you could obviously ask, well, why are we talking about these questions now? Well, football doesn't stop. We talk about football all year long. And I think it's nice to go ahead and sort of outline the top storylines, the top questions, so we know what to look for. And I think the first question, the largest question so far of the offseason, is surrounding the quarterback room. When the Cardinals took Texas Tech quarterback Tyler Shough's commitment, some wondered, well, A, is Tyler going to be the penciled-in starter for 2024? I believe he is. The more important question, the more frequently asked question, is who is going to be his backup? A couple different ways you can look at that. The first question, I feel like, is something that needs to be addressed. Now, don't take it as set in stone, but I think all intents and purposes, Brohm went out into the transfer portal to go get a QB1. Tyler Shough was brought to the university not to be valuable depth, but to be the guy, the go-to guy in 2024. Should not surprise anyone. And I felt like I mentioned a couple times throughout the past couple of months, this was always the plan. Go get another one-year transfer that can, I don't like using the term stopgap, that can serve as the team's QB1 for another season. And then in 2025, you have a big-time quarterback competition, theoretically, between Deuce Adams, Pierce Clarkson, and Brady Allen. And I think, like I mentioned, that was always going to be the case. And it looks like that is at least going to be the plan as we head through the offseason. Now, things can change. Obviously, number one, we mentioned, the best ability is availability. Tyler Shough has to stay healthy. That is the elephant in the room here. For the past couple of seasons, as horrific luck is concerned, a broken femur, I think it was a femur or a tibia, and then a broken collarbone twice, those seem to be more freak accident injuries rather than underlying issues like tendons or, any type of joint issues. It seems like it's more so on the side of bad luck. But at the end of the day, it doesn't matter if it's bad luck or not, still injuries, unfortunately. So best ability is availability. First thing you're looking for throughout spring practice is Tyler Shough to stay healthy. Now, all of this is contingent on the Texas Tech transfer being able to stay on the field for the Cardinals, which you definitely hope that he's able to do. Assuming that he does that, I think the main question, or one of the 3 main position battles to look at is the backup quarterback spot. Now, you can go a couple different ways here. There's a couple different names you can throw out. Obviously, Pierce Clarkson, Brady Allen are going to be the two most popular names, and for good reason. The highest rated quarterbacks, well, actually not technically the highest rated quarterbacks on the roster, because Harrison Bailey, very highly rated coming out of high school as well, but probably the more highly touted at this point in time. It seems like, with Harrison Bailey not really able to get on the field in a consistent capacity, his stock has sort of lowered a considerable amount to where, he is a walk-on onto the team that has pretty high upside for a walk-on. Now, there is a small section of this fan base that completely believes that Harrison Bailey was last year the best and most talented quarterback on the roster. I respect it because I think that the talent is there. I'm not necessarily so sure that I would go as far as saying that he is the best quarterback on the roster. I think that, if his number is called, could you see a situation where he rises to the occasion and wins Louisville a football game? No, that's not out of the realm of possibility. But I don't necessarily think that you can put all your hopes on a walk-on that hasn't really been able to see the field, whether it be at Tennessee, minimal action at UNLV. I can respect the take, but I don't necessarily agree with it. Pierce Clarkson, Brady Allen, probably the two that you're looking at to battle it out for the backup quarterback spot. Deuce Adams, let me tell you something. The guy is going to 100% contend for the starting job in 2025. I look at this as a redshirt year unless he comes to campus and absolutely balls out, turns heads right away. Working against him is that he is not going to be joining the team in the winter. He will be a spring addition, so won't join this team until after he graduates high school, which nothing wrong with it, but as it relates to whether or not he's going to potentially play himself into the 2-3 deep for the Cardinals at quarterback, I'm just not necessarily so sure that that's going to be the case. And that's not a big deal at this point in time. You'd almost expect that he is going to redshirt in 2024, and that will help him to learn the playbook, get to a spot to where he's able to eventually get valuable reps, in practice, and be able to contend for a starting spot in 2025, because I think he's extremely talented, potentially has the highest upside of any quarterback on the roster. And I do think that speaks volumes. So, but we're talking about 2024. We're not talking about upside at the moment. We're talking about, well, I guess we are talking about upside, but not career upside. We're talking about who can be able to come into a game and win you games if need be. Unfortunately, it has to be a topic of conversation with the injury history of Tyler Shough. So I think two guys you're looking at, Brady Allen, Pierce Clarkson, both bring a highly rated football recruiting background to the table. One from the Flyville 23 movement out in California, the other from essentially Brohm's hotbed in recruiting, which is Kentucky, Indiana, Ohio. He is from the state of Indiana, 4-star guy that is familiar with Brohm's system, probably more so than Pierce because he has had an additional year in that system. Don't forget, Pierce missed a good chunk of spring practice last year due to an injury. With a full year of college under his belt, how does the former 4-star rated quarterback from California grow his game and develop? Personally, for me, I think Clarkson will serve as the backup. If you made me go with my intuition, I feel like Clarkson is going to be I feel like Clarkson's going to be the backup. But it's probably going to be a Brady Allen or Pierce Clarkson type conversation as it relates to the timeline of the rest of the offseason. And unless one separates himself from the other, I think it's probably going to be a close race. And people say, well, why does the backup quarterback position really matter so much at the moment? Well, first of all, I mean, like I said, with Tyler Shough's health and availability, it has to become a topic of conversation. Now, I'm not saying that Shough, he is the penciled-in QB1. Could he be dethroned at that spot? with a solid, spring from Clarkson or Allen or Bailey or Deuce Adams in the summer, yeah, that is definitely a hypothetical opportunity. But I'm going to go Pierce Clarkson here. I think that the ability to run the read option could be a solid aspect of what Brohm tries to do. I think it's an aspect that Tyler Shough is going to bring to this offense as well. I think Allen might have a little bit more upside as a passer, but Pierce solid in the underneath routes, solid in the intermediate routes, and is a guy that has competed for the entirety of his high school career. Didn't start until his junior year. Not to say that Brady Allen isn't a competitor, but I think that at the end of the day, we're going to see a situation where I think Clarkson is going to take that QB2 spot, especially with the ability to run as he continues to adjust to the overall scheme, to the playbook, and with the guys at the wide receiver position. I think I'm going to go with Pierce Clarkson here. But you could definitely go with Brady Allen as well, because I think that it's going to be a 2A, 2B type situation. I'm interested. Who do you think is going to be the QB2 for the Cardinals heading into that first game against Austin Peay? Drop a comment down in the YouTube comment section below, and we will obviously monitor that situation heading throughout spring practice. But a couple more questions need to be answered. One of the main one for me, I think that if the backup quarterback was the number one most asked question, my most asked question that I continue to ponder is, how is Jeff Brohm going to address the running backs room in terms of carry shares? Is it going to be by committee? I think it is, and I'm going to explain why. Here's what you might see from the Cardinals backfield in 2024. We'll talk about that after we talk about our friends and the title sponsor of the show, FanDuel. The conference championships are just a couple days away for the NFL, but there's still time to get in on the action with FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. Right now, new customers get $150 in bonus bets guaranteed when you place a $5 bet. That's $150 in bonus bets, win or lose. The app is so easy to use, and there are so many different ways to bet. Same game parlays. The new Explore tab shows popular bets. The Parlay Hub is the best way to find popular parlays. That it's a section that I go to on the daily to see how I can win a good amount of money and more. Visit FanDuel.com/lockedon and make your first bet a layup. FanDuel is the official partner of the NFL. Hey, Cardinal fans, just a reminder, Locked On has launched the first ever national sports 24/7 streaming channel on YouTube. Locked On Sports Today is here for you 24/7, covering the top sports stories of the day with the local experts of Locked On, plus our national shows covering every league. Go to Locked On Sports Today on YouTube and subscribe to the first ever national sports 24/7 streaming channel. The running backs room is very intriguing for me. 2023, we knew what was going to happen. Jawar Jordan was going to be the feature back for Jeff Brohm's first season. I predicted a 1,000-yard rushing season. He ended up getting that. Probably could have absolutely smashed that number had he not had an injury. I did discount, however, the role that Isaac Guerendo was going to play. I thought that was more so going to be Maurice Turner's role rather than Guerendo, but Guerendo had a fantastic season that he displayed for the Cardinals in his one season in the 502. This season's a little bit different because I think you have your projected RB1, but I don't think it's a situation where he's going to receive the lion's share of the carries, and he might, though. But I don't think that that's going to be the case. I think that he's going to receive the majority, but I don't think it's going to be as lopsided. I think Penny Boone from Toledo, baby bust, the MAC Offensive Player of the Year, 1,400 yards and I think 15 rushing touchdowns, is going to get the lion's share of the carries for the Cardinals. 6'1", over 230 pounds. Even though he comes from a non-Power 5 school, I think that the skill set is directly translatable. Had a final three of Louisville, Kentucky, and Florida State, and chose the Cardinals program. I think that he's going to have a role like Guerendo. In the way, let me rephrase. He's not going to have the role like Guerendo. I think he's going to have the impact like Guerendo. That can sort of be a little bit misconstrued because of the statistics, but Guerrero averaged over 5 yards per carry. Does that continue with an increased workload? I guess we'll never know. But I do think that there's an opportunity to where Baby Bus has a season where he's averaging over 5 yards a carry, gets the lion's share of the targets. Will he be a 1,000-yard rusher? I'm not sure, because Don Chaney Jr. from Miami is going to get his carries. Maurice Turner is going to get his carries. So it's a great problem to have, right? You have multiple guys that are that you can justify receiving a good amount of carries, but there's only so much of the target share to go around. There's only so much. I think that we're going to see an offensive scheme that is going to open it up a little bit more in terms of throwing the ball down the field. You're going to see, I don't think it's going to be jumping off the page different, but you're going to see more of a deviation towards throwing the football. Pro style offense still, there's going to be a dedication to the run, but I don't think it's going to be fully like last year to where the run has to set up the pass. I think this is going to be an offense that throws the ball downfield more, tries to stretch the field, potentially more trick plays due to the players that they brought in. That's not a name. Brought in, or that's not a word. Sorry, I really can't speak today. But once again, I think it's going to be a by-committee approach where Boone is going to get the most carries. Don Chaney Jr. and Maurice Turner, I think, are going to break up the remaining share there. Chaney, if he's healthy, that's the main thing here, is that maybe this doesn't really turn into much of a conversation if Don Chaney can't stay healthy, which, once again, I'll repeat, the best ability is availability. If you can't stay on the field, well, it doesn't matter. And Chaney is extremely talented. Many people from Miami, a couple that covered the program, have told me straight up, look, Dalton, Chaney is, without a doubt, talented enough to play on Sundays regularly. However, it's a matter of being able to put it all together consistently and stay healthy. And if he can do that, I think he has a rare blend of size and speed that plays to his advantage, and we'll see him get a solid workload for the Cardinals. And then you have Maurice Turner, who I think is going to be the most involved in the passing game. And he's going to get his touches as well. When his number was called, more often than not, he rose to the occasion. If you made me pick, I think Chaney gets more of a workload than Turner. But those three guys, I think, make up the nucleus of what's going to be yet another running back committee for the Cardinals. One name that I think could potentially throw a wrench in that whole plan, not saying he's going to, but could, is 2024 four-star commit, or signee at this point, early enrollee, Isaac Brown. My apologies. It's Isaac Brown and Duke Watson. Isaac Brown is the early enrollee, four-star from South Florida. Duke Watson is the high three-star, low four-star from Georgia. He is not an early enrollee. Isaac Brown is a speedster running back that had a fantastic senior year, was a guy that performed really well in camp settings. And by the time he got to his senior year, people in the South Florida area, the same people that told me about Don Chaney, turned around and said, look, Isaac Brown could be the next best Louisville player from the South Florida area. He's that good. Is he year one good enough to play good enough? That is the main question. Unfortunately, he might be a victim of a very crowded depth chart. And that's not a bad thing. Like I said, it's a very good thing to have the competition. And sometimes there's not a tremendously open avenue for a player to carve out their role right away. But I think Isaac Brown is a player that right away is good enough talent-wise to get some targets, to get some carries. We're going to see, he's a player that I'm watching for specifically as we head into spring practices and the spring game to see how well he performs. Because he is one of the only true freshmen that I feel like has the opportunity to play early. It's not like a high percentage chance, but he's talented enough to force Brohm's hand to, hey, you're going to have to play me. I'm this good enough type thing. So that's something to focus on, but it's going to be another by-committee approach for the Cardinals in 2024. I would expect that to be the case, and really excited to see who ends up separating themselves. Could be sort of a thing like Scott Satterfield's tenure, to where, hey, feed the hot hand. Whoever was rushing well or whoever presented the best chance against a certain matchup is going to play the most. So I'm interested to see how this is all going to unfold for the Cardinals program. Another position on the other side of the ball that I'm interested to see how the depth chart is constructed, who's going to be on the outside looking in, etc., is the interior of the defensive line. You have multiple players returning. You have some other transfers coming in. We'll talk about what the defensive line looks like from the interior here in just a moment. Before we do that, I want to thank you all again for making us your first listen of the day. Just a reminder, the Locked On Global podcast is free on all streaming services, including YouTube, 5 days a week, your team every day. The next episode of the show will discuss Jermaine Lole returning for his senior season, which is sort of a solid topic to discuss after this upcoming segment. We'll have another weekly mailbag. We'll also talk about the Cardinals receiving some preseason love in the ACC standings, or preseason standings, ahead of next season. Like I said, never too early to talk about football, so I appreciate you all tuning in. But the final segment of the show, we're discussing the top 3 position battles throughout the offseason for the Louisville football team. And you can honestly go with a couple different ones. I think offensive line is one to look at. Cornerback is another one outside of Quincy Riley. You know, who's going to be CB2, who's going to be in the 2 deep, etc. But defensive line for me is an intriguing topic to discuss, because there is an absolute logjam in the depth chart currently. You have your returning guys. You have Destel, who is getting overlooked a little bit, I feel like, in the offseason. We talk about Thor Griffith, talk about Jermaine Lole, and make no mistake about it, those 2 guys deserve their flowers. They deserve to be talked about. But I also think that Destel is a guy who, heading into the 2023 year, we were looking to take that next step forward in his game. And I felt like statistically it wasn't there, but I felt like he was really good in defending the run. The 6'1" native of Stockbridge, Georgia, will be a key part to the Cardinals defensive line in 2024. Some other returning players that also will play a role in this equation. You talk about Jared Dawson, who's sort of in the same situation with Destel, multiple year guy who Dawson had 2.5 sacks, who essentially replicated his sack numbers from 2023 or 2022, I should say. Solid interior pass rusher. So Destel, Jared Dawson, Jermaine Lole, Arizona State transfer, who was able to stay healthier in 2023 and showed how good he is when he's able to see the field. And he comes back in 2024, just announced over the weekend that he will be returning. That's key news for the Cardinals. So with the 4-2-5 base defensive package, there's only so many spots to go around. You have Lole, you have Dawson, you have Tell, a couple guys that can play into the depth chart. You also have Tawfiq Thomas, who played sparingly throughout the 2023 season. Only 3 games he recorded statistics in. He's a 300-pound native of Tampa, Florida, could play himself into the picture as well. And then some local guys, Selah Brown, Micah Carter, probably project to be more on the edge, but could slide to the interior potentially. I probably would say they're more so on the edge. Wu Spencer, Sadiq Clemens is another guy on the interior of that defensive line. So multiple players are going to be contending for just a couple of spots, and there's already an issue with playing time as it is. Now, you've had players enter the portal. Raheem Craig entered the portal. A couple other guys And then you brought in 2 transfers that I feel are going to play a considerable amount. Thor Griffith, FCS All-American from Harvard, one of the highest graded Pro Football Focus players of the past couple seasons, 6'2", 305 pounds, was named to Bruce Feldman's annual Freaks list. And he is a transfer that a bunch of top programs were going after. And I think he's going to slide into a starting role in 2024. He is that good and will be a solid player in the ACC. Jordan Girard is the sort of an X factor that I'm looking at. Spent a couple of seasons at Florida International, 38 tackles in 2023. He had 2 sacks, 1 forced fumble. Like I said, 3 seasons down with the Panthers, 6'3", 295 pounds, was committed to Minnesota, ended up flipping that commitment and signing with the Cardinals. And he is on campus for spring ball. It should be worth mentioning that Thor is not going to be on campus for spring ball. He will be on campus heading into the summer. So whether or not that makes a difference or not, I think is to be seen. But it could play a role in the conversation. I will not overlook that. But this is not just a spring practice discussion. This is an off-season discussion. So it truly depends. I think Girard could be solid in defending the run and also being a underrated pass rusher from the interior. So if you're looking at the 2 deep, I think any rotation of, in no order, Lole, Griffith, Tell, Dawson, and Girard are going to be your 5 that you look at for this 2 deep on the interior of the defensive line. But don't overlook guys like Tawfiq Thomas, Sadiq Clemens, some of the younger players. I would have kind of thrown Jeffrey Clark into this conversation as well before he entered the portal. But those 5 that I mentioned are the ones that I'm looking for into seeing, who is going to play themselves into a starting role. I don't think it is a question that's going to be answered soon. It's probably a question that is answered right before, the opening game, to where maybe it's another situation on the depth chart of this player or that player will be starting, because that is sort of becoming a common practice for coaches not wanting to tip their hand ahead of the season opener. The season opener is against Austin Peay, so you do question how much you're going to know early on for the Cardinals. And we will end up seeing how that works. But the rest of the football schedule will be released, I believe, this week. So the 24th, which is Wednesday, we will know the conference slate. So there will be a conference opponent in week 2. I think it's week 3 for the Cardinals, if I'm not mistaken. But it could be a situation to where we might not necessarily know who's separating themselves until a couple weeks into the year. Yeah, Jacksonville State is on the 2nd week. So week 3 is TBD, but it will be a conference opponent. So for me, these are the 3 positions that I feel are the ones in which the battles are to be focused on. I want to hear what position you all feel like, what position battle you are looking at most closely to see what's going to happen throughout the offseason. Overall, that's going to wrap up today's episode of the show. Everyone have a great day. We'll see you right back here tomorrow.